End of Days, Zombie Apocalypse. Written and read by Tony Capobianco. In October, on Friday the 13th, the end of days began. The world as we knew it came to a grinding stop. The marvels of humanity's technological advancements couldn't stop it. Experts in biology, chemistry, physics, and medicine couldn't explain what was happening. Religious scholars and clergy couldn't save us. Neither the police nor the military were able to protect us. The structures of the world's organized religions and governments quickly crumbled when the Great Death arose. Trusted, seemingly permanent public institutions collapsed like tall buildings in an earthquake. The first remarkable event was the sudden onset of a mysterious green glowing fog. The eerie and unexplainable fog enshrouded the entire world. From continent to continent, and from ocean to oscillating ocean, the fog festered. Then, the dead rose from their graves and devoured the living. Like a plague of locusts, they swarmed. To be a survivor, you would have to chart your path yourself. Working as a supervisor in a movie theater, Jake Ashton started the nightly closing procedures. The last showtime for the evening had already started, and it was time to shut down. He took out his keys from his pocket and opened a cabinet in the concession stand to do a recount. The initial count that night produced a number of substantial shortages. The number of popcorn bags, soda cups, and candy didn't match the number of sales processed by the computer. The floor of the concession stand was splattered with popcorn butter topping and spilt popcorn. When it's busy, the stand could often look like a war zone. Sitting on the sticky and grimy floor of the concession stand, Jake turned to his fellow supervisor and said, "Is that weird green fog still out there?" Holding her clipboard, Jenna replied, "It was still lingering when I checked about a half hour ago." Tapping his keys, Jake responded, "The eerie fog rolled in when I took a smoke break as the sun was going down. I've never seen anything like it. What are they saying about it?" Shrugging her shoulders, Jenna replied, "I don't know. Work has been so busy tonight that I haven't really had time to check my phone. Since this place only would close for the end of the world, I figure that finding out what it is can wait till my shift ends. That being said, I've got a bad feeling. It's probably good that we were so busy tonight, because whenever I think about that glimmering green fog, I get the creeps." Jake pointed his pen at the cabinets and said, "I'll count the backstock of Station 2, and you can count Station 3. Jenna Gomez, his colleague, replied, "Okay, let's get this out of the way. As fun as this is, I want to get out of here on time tonight." Holding a box of candy in his hand, Jake said, 31 sour goobers. College sure has paid off. 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars later has brought me to this moment. It was all worth it. This is my great destiny." Jenna laughed hysterically. It had been a long, stressful day, and a good laugh can lighten the mood in a way that few other things can. Jake's dry and dark sense of humor was wed to his sarcasm. Retail warriors often appreciate sarcastic humor. Jake continued to count the stand while Jenna went to close the entrance doors and the gate. Located in the mall, the theater had 2 entrances. Guests that were still watching the last movies of the night could leave through the exit doors. The clanging caused by the shutting of the metal gate always brought Jake a sense of relief. That sound meant that there would be no more customers for the night. It was almost time to go home. A loud and deep moaning filled the lobby as someone shook the gate. The rattling of the gates was the kind of thing that choppers sometimes do on Black Friday. Jake laughed and said, "All right. I know that it's Friday the 13th in October, and that the horror movie, Bitten, My Werewolf Transformation, is sold out, but could we tone it down a little?" Jenna screamed. Although Jenna typically had a flair for theatrics, this scream was different. It sounded like it was caused by genuine terror. Stopping his counting, Jake stood up so that he could see over the counter. Brushing his black hair from his eyes, he said, "That is so cool. You guys look like authentic zombies. You really went all in. You could have chosen to dress up as freshly turned zombies, but instead, you chose to look like you've been rotting in the grave for a decade." Staggering away from the gate, Jenna replied, Jake? I don't think that those are costumes. I was only a couple of feet away from them, and they not only look like they've been dead for a decade, but they smell like it too." The rotting corpse-like figures continued moaning and forcefully shaking the front gate. Talking and laughter was heard inside the theater. A movie had just gotten out. The noise of the exiting crowd of people grew, and was followed by the clicking sound of the exit doors being opened. As the moviegoers departed the theater, they walked into the main lobby of the mall and exited the building. The undead-looking figures ceased rattling the gate. The macabre figures turned and slowly walked towards the exiting crowd. One zombie-looking character lunged at a teenage boy and knocked him onto the floor. It pinned the young man down and bit his face. Several more of the undead converged on the restrained boy and began eating him alive. They munched away as though they were starving. Although the young man cried for help initially, he was soon silenced as he choked on his own blood. The ghouls had torn into his midsection and proceeded to rip out his organs. The scene was ghastly. Blood pooled onto the floor of the lobby. Moviegoers panicked, shrieked, and raced outside. In the chaos, one man slipped on the pool of blood and cracked his head on the corner of the ATM. The grotesque zombies then turned their attention to the fallen man, and promptly finished cracking open his head like a nut. Once sufficiently split, they devoured his brain. The horrible screams from outside of the mall began to multiply. Patrons were being attacked on their way back to their cars. The flashing yellow lights from mall security's vehicle was seen through the windows. The vehicle had come to a stop. A scream was then followed by silence. Beyond the walls of the mall, a feeding frenzy was underway, and humans were the chum. The sound of police sirens grew louder as flashing red and blue lights shone through the glass doors. The loud pops of rapid gunfire soon followed. The shots continued for 5 minutes, and then, once again, there was dead silence. Adam, one of the managers, walked towards the front door as he took his keys out. Jake took a step forward and said, "What do you think you're doing?" Adam answered, "I'm going to find out what the hell is going on out there. We still have guests in 2 of our theaters." Jake replied, "You want to know what's going on out there? I'll tell you what's going on out there. It's the damned zombie apocalypse. If you go out there unarmed, you're not going to come back." Adam sneered and said, "Zombie apocalypse? You've got to be kidding me. It's probably kids high on bath salts or meth. It could be some weird death gang from Central America. When I open these doors, I'm sure that I'll find out that the police have already taken care of the unrest." Adam unlocked the door and walked outside. He didn't make it 5 steps before a group of decomposing, reanimated corpses swarmed on him and ate him. Not wasting any time, Jake, already with keys in hand, ran to the door and locked it. There was nothing that he or anybody else could do for Adam. The 12 remaining employees, along with the sole surviving manager, Carmine, trembled with fear. Numerous customers had been savagely attacked, killed, and eaten alive. Their head manager had just met the same fate. Making matters even worse, the police seemed to have been overrun as well. Pulling out a pack of cigarettes, Jake took a cigarette and put it to his lips. Roy, one of the supervisors, said, "Jake, bro, you can't smoke in here." Lighting his cigarette, Jake replied, "Right. Why don't you rat me out to mall security? Or better yet, maybe you could call the cops." "Oh, what's that?" "They're unable to come at this time because they've been eaten." Frowning, Roy put his head down and clammed up. Taking a puff from his cigarette, Jake said, "Go move the arcade machines in front of the glass doors. For tonight, at least, our best bet is to secure the theater and stay here." Some of the employees grumbled and muttered amongst themselves, but no one strongly objected or offered a better option. Carmine lit a cigarette and said, "Smoke 'em if you've got 'em. It's going to be a long night. I agree with Jake. If we can secure the theater, we'll be better off in here than out there. The second-to-last movie will be breaking in 20 minutes, and the last one ends 15 minutes after that. We need to calmly inform them of what's going on. If they walk out those exits, they'll be ripped to pieces. Nicole and Pedro, go to Theater 7 and tell them to wait there until I speak to them." Nicole questioned, "How do I keep them from leaving?" Carmine replied, "Inform them that I'll give them coupons for free drinks. Katie, come with me to Theater 9 and I'll explain things to the people in there. Jake, Jenna, and the rest of you, go pick up whatever weapons you can and make sure that all of the exits are closed and locked shut. That includes the fire exits in each theater on both levels. Then come back here and meet up with me." Picking up a screwdriver and placing a hammer in his belt, Jake went into the main hallway of the theater. He walked halfway down the hall, entered the maintenance closet, and took out a large commercial broom. Jenna cocked her head to the left and said, "What are you going to do? Sweep one of those things to death?" Grinning, Jake replied, "Yes, that's exactly what I'll do." Jenna, carrying a broom handle, followed Jake as they walked into Theater 8. It was fairly dark and they didn't immediately hear or see anyone. The pair walked down the aisle and searched each row until they came to the movie screen. Surrounding the big screen were curtains, and the curtains hid the emergency exits. Taking a breath, Jake quickly pulled back the curtain. No living nor dead person was there. Theater 8 was clear. Walking toward Theater 6, Jake said, "This time, when we get to the exit, pull open the curtain for me, and I'll be ready to strike if necessary." Jenna nodded affirmatively. The 2 supervisors carefully entered Theater 6. Going through an empty theater at night could be a creepy experience under normal circumstances. The quietness, coupled with the possible places for an attacker to hide, could really get the brain to imagine awful scenarios. With zombies on the loose, Jenna and Jake imagined the most horrific futures. The theater appeared to be empty, but they heard something strange. It sounded like rats were gnawing away at something. Jake thought that it seemed like there was a moisture to the sound. It wasn't the sound of dry wood being chewed. There was a sort of fleshiness to it. Their hearts pounded as they came to the front of the theater. Unlike the curtain in the previous theater, this one wasn't still. The dark red curtain rippled as if someone was behind it. Jake nodded his head up and down. Jenna then yanked the curtain back. 2 hideous zombies were eating a woman. The woman's black sweater was ripped apart and covered in blood. One female zombie was eating her left leg, while the male zombie fed upon her brain. The rotten corpse had smashed the poor woman's head against the floor until her skull split open. With great speed, Jake drove the screwdriver into the female zombie's head. It immediately fell over. The male zombie stood up, but before it could take a step, Jenna hit it over the head with her broomstick. Unfazed, the undead monster moved toward Jenna. Her face turned the color of ash. As Jenna stepped backwards, Jake took the big broom and pushed the zombie against the exit door. He then shortened his grip on the broom, bringing him closer to the target. Once in range, he jammed the bloody screwdriver into the zombie's left eye socket. The zombie was so decomposed that it no longer had intact eyeballs. After a few twitches, the foul corpse fell to the floor. Rattled, Jake walked to a seat in the front row and sat down. Shaking, Jenna said, "This can't be happening. This can't be happening. This can't be happening." Covering his face with his hands, Jake said, "I wonder if we're going to get paid overtime for this." Jenna sat beside Jake and replied, "You must have had your brains eaten by one of those things if you think our corporate overlords would give us more money." Laughing, Jake quipped, "With the way those meatballs run this company, they might be safe from the zombies." Jenna looked at Jake and asked, "Why's that?" With a serious expression, Jake answered, "Because these zombies seem to like the taste of brains, so they'll have to look elsewhere." The 2 friends sat and laughed for a few minutes. The roller coaster of emotions that they had been riding all evening had exhausted them. Hysterical laughter was their natural response to the calamitous events. Few mental coping mechanisms are better than a good laugh. Leaving Theater 6, they went on to clear several more theaters. They didn't encounter any additional zombies on that particular mission. Unfortunately for them, the night wasn't over yet. Besides, even if they did survive the terrible night, these weren't vampires. The sun wasn't going to destroy their decomposed corpses. Returning to the lobby, Jake and Jenna found over 100 people congregated there. A small number of people didn't listen to Carmine's advice. They had exited the theater by way of the doors that automatically lock from the outside once they are closed. They didn't make it very far before the undead horde surrounded them and then feasted upon them. Most of the moviegoers lost any doubt about the danger when they saw the dead, mostly eaten corpses beyond the gate. The zombies that had been outside of the gate were no longer there. As Carmine was telling the customers to return to the theaters to take a seat, a voice on a police loudspeaker boomed from outside. A male voice said, "This is the police. It's safe to come out now. Everything is all right." Due to the fact that the front glass doors were blocked by the arcade machines, the crowd quickly went around and left through the self-closing doors. The customers felt excited and relieved upon hearing the message over the loudspeaker. Along with most of the staff, Carmine followed the crowd outside. Jake, Jenna, Pedro, and Katie remained inside the lobby. Blood-curdling shrieks and screams filled the night sky. Jake, Jenna, Pedro, and Katie looked on through the windows and watched the horrific bloodbath commence. The undead mob had migrated out of sight. When the police vehicles arrived, their flashing lights and sirens served not as a warning, but a dinner bell for the zombies. Unfortunately for Carmine and everyone else who trusted that the police had secured the area, it was too late. Hundreds of the undead encircled the humans. Although there was no evidence indicating that the zombies could run, they didn't need to. While they moved slowly, There were so many of them that escape seemed impossible. They worked together like a colony. It seemed as though they each had a job to do, and they did it. It wasn't unlike the way that flocks of birds behave. As the enormous circle of death slowly tightened around the crowd, the awful screams grew louder and most desperate. Each zombie seemed to have been dead for months or years. The putrid, desiccated corpses of men, women, and children moaned as they approached their prey. Their foul smell polluted the air. The green glowing fog accentuated their ghastly appearance. Just as the fog smothered the surface of the earth, so too did the zombies cling to the helpless people. The ghoulish horde dug their bony fingers into tender human flesh. Their rotten mouths bit and tore through the warm skin. The massacre was so great that several streams of blood flowed down the mall parking lot. The carnage was truly monstrous. The 4 survivors from the movie theater checked to make sure that the exit doors had been completely shut. From there, they went into the manager's office. Locking the door behind them, they watched the theater security feed on the monitors. Things looked quiet inside the building. Afraid, confused, and isolated, they frantically scoured social media for news reports. It immediately became clear that what they were experiencing wasn't an isolated incident. Reports from around the world confirmed that the dead were rising. From New York City to London to Tokyo, the strange green fog rolled in, and shortly after, corpses rose from the grave. The zombie attacks were a worldwide scourge. Although it was impossible to know the number of casualties, it was clear that the numbers were staggering. The loss of life was difficult to comprehend. Watching clips on their phones, they were shocked to see news anchors solemnly speaking about a zombie apocalypse. The stuff of horror movies and nightmares had become reality. It was all so surreal. Although they still felt the same, the world had changed over the course of one night. Video of zombies walking city streets were broadcast from every news outlet. Video footage showed zombie attacks in office buildings, on city streets, in the suburbs, at churches, and beyond. Horrifying footage revealed the dead escaping their underground captivity. The dead escaped from coffins and mausoleums. The videos appeared to have gone viral at a speed which matched the zombie outbreak. The chilling sights had ignited fear, panic, discussions, and of course, conspiracy theories. Planned Zocalypse was the name of the conspiracy theory that became the most prevalent. The speed at which the theory had spread was staggering. According to the Planned Zocalypse theory, the whole thing was a meticulously planned hoax. Followers of the conspiracy believed that nefarious, ruling, globalist elites had concocted and planned a fake zombie outbreak decades ago. Hollywood movies and TV shows about zombies were supposedly created to plant the seeds of a zombie outbreak in the unsuspecting minds of the global population. Believers asserted that the zombie shows, movies, and video games were primers. Priming was the word that they used to explain how the movie, music, and entertainment industry had gaslighted the entire population. Of course, the true believers excluded themselves from the ranks of the deceived. To their minds, the vast majority of the global population were ignorant sheep. They, themselves, on the contrary, had open eyes to see the truth about what was really happening. They were convinced that they were the enlightened ones, and that they were the heroic champions that fought against the satanic forces of darkness. Supporters of the planned Zocalypse asserted that the end goal was for the global elite to declare worldwide martial law and assume absolute power. Thus, the shadowy puppeteers would stage a so-called zombie apocalypse to create a tyrannical dystopia. Jake scowled and shook his head in disbelief as he watched a video of a conspiracy theorist live streaming his attempt at revealing the truth to the world. The individual had used social media to gather a fairly large group of truth fighters in New York City. The man yelled at the NYPD as they fought to clear the streets that were infested with the undead. Spittle from the man's mouth sprayed onto the faces of police officers. The leader of the truth fighters went on to mock the zombies. He called them crisis actors and shameful communist scum. His face, red with rage, depicted the anger that churned deep inside of him. Along with several followers, he walked towards the mob of zombies with the intent of exposing the lies of the government. Coming within 5 yards of the hungry horde, the leader pointed at the zombies and said, "The time has come. The truth shall be revealed, and it will set us free. Expose these pathetic actors for the frauds that they truly are." 2 truth fighters, a man and a woman, lunged at a zombie. To their surprise, the zombie bit the man's arm and then clung to him. The mob of the undead surrounded him and piled on top of him. One reanimated corpse bit and tore the flesh off of the man's cheek. Within minutes, the man was eaten alive. The horrific scene was live-streamed for the whole world to see. The woman's face was white as a ghost as she stumbled backwards and fell to the ground. With her mouth opened wide, she picked herself back up and ran down the street. The undead were everywhere. With zombies to her left, to her right, in front of her, and behind her, she frantically looked for a place of refuge. The only option, and it didn't look to be a good one, was to flee to an abandoned building. Running as fast as she could, she rushed toward the abandoned building. The building wasn't free of zombies, but there were fewer zombies around it than there appeared to be in the immediate area. Seeing the dead body of a fallen officer, she stopped and grabbed his gun. With the handgun in one hand, she raced to the dilapidated building. Hideous zombies staggered around the property. Panicked, the woman ran around them and dodged and weaved her way into the building. Once inside, she heard the moans of the undead echoing through the empty halls. Hiding from behind a wall column, she waited to make her next move. The drone live-streaming what it saw continued to follow her. The woman ran down the hallway. As she turned sharply to her right, she fell down to the floor. It looked like she had sprained her ankle. Struggling to get back up on her feet, she hobbled down the hallway. Her grimacing face momentarily changed to a weak smile as she discovered the leader of the truth fighters. After a brief conversation, the truth fighter-in-chief helped his wounded disciple down some hallways and up the stairs to the top floor. The duo soon learned that the top floor of the abandoned building wasn't vacant. To their horror, and to the horror of the millions of viewers that watched along, zombies were prowling the floor that they had hoped to be a sanctuary. Seeing a wooden fence that was meant to keep people out, the 2 truth fighters made a break for it. Navigating their way over the boards that made up the fence, they entered an empty room. The outside wall had fallen apart long ago. The room had come to resemble a covered porch. Looking outside, the dark night sky hung over them like a deadly storm from above, and the terrible green fog lurked like a toxic cloud of death from below. A large group of zombies moaned while relentlessly trying to break through the wooden boards that separated them from their next meal. The look of complete hopeless desperation appeared on the faces of the truth fighters. They were trapped. Realizing that they had nowhere to run or hide, the conspiracy theory duo sat on the floor. With ravenous and relentless zombies to their backs, the truth fighter leader lit a cigarette. After inhaling deeply, he shared his cigarette with his female apostle. The smoke that they exhaled floated up and disappeared into nothingness. Soon, their lives would be blown away like smoke in the wind. The undead ravagers soon broke through the rickety wooden barrier. Hearing the sound of the wood breaking, the 2 truth fighters rose to their feet. Walking to the edge of the room and looking through where a wall once stood, they turned back around and looked inside. Behind them, stood a 100-foot drop to the unforgiving ground. Before them approached 30 or more zombies. The leader picked up a piece of concrete that had broken from the wall some time ago. Raising it up, he desperately held it up for self-defense. The woman raised the handgun that she had picked up off of a police officer's corpse. Aiming at the undead, she fired again and again. She had successfully killed several zombies, but it didn't make much of a difference. Within a minute, she had run out of bullets. As the zombies closed in on them, the woman looked at the zombies, then turned to look at the ground below. In that way, she looked back and forth a couple of times, until finally she leapt from the building. Plummeting over 100 feet, her body splattered when it violently hit the ground. The leader of the Truth Fighters threw the piece of concrete at a zombie. With tears in his eyes, he cowered as the undead ghouls tore into his flesh. One rotted, reanimated corpse bit his hand, while another bit his shoulder. 50% of one of the female corpse's flesh had rotted off. With the bones of her face showing, she bit into the Truth Fighter's lips and ripped them off. The lips that he had used to spread conspiracies and misinformation had been bitten off. The remaining zombies disemboweled him and then proceeded to eat his intestines like humans eat sausage. Never was there a more grisly death. The drone continued capturing the ghastly scene when something unexpected happened. The green, glowing fog rose up the walls of the abandoned building and covered the dead body of the leader of the Truth Fighters like a burial shroud. After several minutes, the man's body began to sporadically and spastically twitch. Within minutes, his body rose up. He was more skeleton than flesh. Yet, he rose and walked forward. The world watched as he became a member of the undead legions. The green fog had reanimated what was left of his body. After Jake and his friends from the movie theater finished watching the live stream, they sat speechless for a time. Welp, it just goes to show. The truth will make you free, and untruth will make you undead, said Jake as he folded his arms across his chest and leaned back in a chair. Guys, what are we going to do? This zombie thing isn't just happening here in the Hudson Valley. It's not like the military and the CDC can just quarantine this place. Those things are everywhere. Where can we go? Asked Jenna. We could go to a safe zone. I read that the National Guard has set up secure shelters outside of major cities, Pedro suggested. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. At least the soldiers will have guns to protect us, Katie added. Protect us? You mean like the fleet of police cars that came here and got eaten alive for their troubles? Their guns weren't enough. There are too damn many of those ugly bastards. Besides, I don't think it's a good idea to go anywhere near a city right now, said Jake. But maybe the military will be able to exterminate these things if they are given enough time, Jenna said as she stared at the security monitors. Time isn't something that's on our side, don't you see? Every time a person is killed and then exposed to that damn fog, they rise and join the ranks of the undead. The number of the zombie horde will grow exponentially. Imagine how quickly their numbers will grow as they sweep through New York City. They could gain millions of reanimated corpses in a few days, Jake explained as he lit a cigarette. But they're not unstoppable. You and Jenna killed a couple of them and you didn't even have guns. Imagine what the U.S. military could do, said Pedro as he opened a bottle of water. I don't know. We were lucky. There's something else. That green fog seems to be significant. The dead didn't begin to rise from their earthly tombs until the glowing green fog appeared. The green mist is all over the world. Nothing about it or any of this is normal. You saw how the body of the Truth Fighter leader was reanimated shortly after it had been exposed to the glowing green stuff. Now, notice the dead bodies on the other side of our gate. They haven't come back to life, and they haven't been exposed to the green crap. I don't think that's a coincidence, Jake explained. Guys? Guys? Look at this, said Jenna as she pointed to the security monitor. The four friends stared attentively at the screen. A zombie had wandered outside of the theater gate. The silhouettes of the zombies were seen outside of the glass doors that led to the mall's main lobby. A few minutes passed, when the zombie inside of the mall pushed up against the bar on the door and opened it. As he staggered outside, a zombie from outside entered the mall. Before the door closed, several more zombies slowly came through the open door. The slow pace of the zombies had allowed the green glowing fog to enter the lobby. Jumping up from his chair, Jake opened the door and ran out of the manager's office. Jenna, Pedro, and Katie looked on in bewilderment. Watching the security monitors, they watched Jake dash to the maintenance closet. Further confusion set when they saw Jake emerge from the closet with a leaf blower and a bag. The leaf blower was used when theater rooms had been thoroughly trashed by sold-out crowds. Supervisors would turn it on and blow the trash left under seats to the front of the theater. Then, the theater floor staff would sweep the mountain of soda cups, popcorn bags, trays of nachos, and pretzels. Jenna, Katie, and Pedro watched with their mouths agape. As Jake ran back up to the theater lobby, the rest of the surviving crew emerged from the office. Jake, buddy, have you lost your mind? Pedro questioned with a look of concern. At least I have a mind to lose, Jake quipped as he opened the bag that he brought up from the maintenance closet. He began passing around screwdrivers and hammers. Wait, you're not thinking about opening the gate, are you? Katie asked as she raised her eyes. Of course not, Jake replied as he checked the fuel level of the leaf blower. Oh, thank God, Katie remarked in relief. We're going to go through the exit doors on the theater level, Jake added. Wait, you want to do what now? A perplexed Jenna questioned. You, me, and Pedro are going into the mall lobby while Katie stays here inside to make sure that we aren't locked out of the theater. I'm going to use the leaf blower to blow that green crap out of here. I don't want the fog to reanimate any of the dead bodies inside of the mall. While I'm doing that, you and Pedro are going to drive these screwdrivers into their undead heads. Then, once the lobby is clear, we make sure that the door is locked. We don't want any more of those undead butt faces in here. You dig? Jake said as he looked at Jenna. Before anyone could respond, Jake was already on his way. Jake exited through the theater door. Jenna and Pedro followed. Pedro gasped when he saw that the green fog was reanimating a body that had been mauled by zombies earlier that evening. Although it had little flesh remaining, and its brain had been eaten, it stood up and started staggering around. Including the freshly reanimated zombies, there were 4 zombies in total in the lobby. Pedro ran to one of the zombies and stabbed it in its head. The zombie dropped to the floor. Within moments, it stood right back up. Pedro's eyes doubled in size as his jaw dropped. He started to tremble. Damn it, Pedro! I told you not to attack until after I blew the green crap out of here. The supernatural fog will just keep bringing the corpses back unless I can get it away from the zombies, Jake angrily explained as he fired up the leaf blower. The motor of the powerful commercial blower hummed as Jake dispersed the fog. Now! Kill these dead bastards now! Jake yelled. Jenna and Pedro launched into action. Using her speed, Jenna ran circles around a female zombie. Attempting to turn and keep its eyes on Jenna, the zombie staggered, lost balance, and then fell down. Seizing the moment of opportunity, Jenna drove the screwdriver into its head. Pedro cracked a male zombie's skull with a hammer and then used the screwdriver in his left hand to pierce its brain. The zombie immediately collapsed. Jake rushed a female zombie and drove a screwdriver through her eye. Once again, the zombie dropped to the floor. Without missing a beat, Jake took a hammer from his left hand and put it in his right. Charging towards the last remaining zombie, the freshly reanimated zombie with no brain, Jake leapt into the air, spun around, and smashed the zombie's skull. The force of the blow was so great that skull fragments scattered across the floor. Wanting to make sure that the skull was completely destroyed, Jake continued to hammer it until nearly nothing remained. Returning back to the relative safety of the secured theater, the survivors went up to the projection booth to relax and decompress. The mall was the safest place for them at that time. With plenty of hot dogs, pizza, nachos, pretzels, popcorn, soda, and water, they wouldn't go hungry any time in the foreseeable future. Additionally, they could secure the rest of the mall and use whatever they needed. Restaurants and clothing stores provided them with an abundance of necessities and even comforts. They could even watch movies on the big screen whenever they pleased. Most importantly, Jake had discovered something crucial for the potential survival of the human race. The undead horde was an apocalyptic threat that could wipe humanity from the face of the earth. Although they seemed invincible, Jake had found a weakness. The young, aspiring horror writer that worked at a movie theater had been the first person to learn how to destroy the undead. If he could get the word out, people might have a chance to live another day. Nothing was certain, apart from the assurance that survivors would have daunting days ahead. Even before the green, glowing, supernatural fog arrived, a fog of misinformation had led many people into isolated echo chambers. The loss of trust, coupled with the spread of lies, had hurt society long before the zombies rose from the dead. The rise of the truth fighters illustrated how dangerous it can be to mistake lies for truth. The question that hung over the fate of the world like a dark cloud was a simple one. Would the military, the police, news organizations, and people around the world believe Jake's discovery? Would they ignore his information in favor of information that wasn't true but that they wished to be true? Or would they hear Jake out and objectively test his theory out? Would they use his knowledge, blow out the fog, and destroy the army of the undead? There remained a choice. Think critically and act accordingly, or become an undead zombie. The end of days had arrived. It was possible that the zombie apocalypse would eradicate humankind, but the final day had not come yet. As long as survivors existed, there would be hope for a tomorrow. Thanks for stopping by the haunted Half Moon Inn. I hope that you have enjoyed your stay. Before you go, please put a wooden stake through the like button and leave a comment for the spirits to read. If you did enjoy your time with us, subscribe to this undead channel. Doing those little things really helps me to reach more souls. The world is sick and hurting. It needs more horror. Help me to heal the world through horror. Together, we can haunt this world one home at a time. And always remember, just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they aren't there.